then that person needs to understand that by sending that to me in my off time and expecting a response, they are violating the boundary that I've set up for my family. And that's not right. And I have to be willing to stand up to that. Hi, I'm Brian Zvotek, and this is the Kick Some Class podcast, the show designed to help educators kick some class. So, if you're an educator who wants more impact in your class, more time for your loved ones, and more balance in your life, well, you're in the right place. And whether you've yet to teach your first class or you're an old grizzled veteran, well, I'm going to be bringing you tips, tricks, tutorials, and reflections to help you kick some class in every area of your life. You can get all the episodes at kicksomeclass.com, or you can get them right here on YouTube in this playlist. All right, well, before we jump right in, I wanted to make sure that you get a chance to get a copy of my 5 Things Guide. Now, basically what this is the 5 first things that come to mind when somebody talks to me about life balance and making a difference in education. So I put these together from over 20 years of helping other teachers avoid burnout while I was doing the same thing myself. So you can get this by going to kicksomeclass.com/freebies, and you can download your free PDF. All right, guys. So everybody knows that right now in education, it's a really difficult time and teachers are burning out and they're getting really frustrated and overworked. And it seems as though if you're not an educator, you probably don't understand what it's like unless you're in the medical field and you know exactly what it's like, probably times 100. So I want to talk to you guys today about 5 things that we can do to make sure that we have a balanced life, to kind of win that battle, to make sure that we're not getting burned out. So they're pretty straightforward. The first one, really, this entire thing comes from something Stephen Covey talked about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that is begin with the end in mind. And so I want you to think about this. You know, we talk about that all the time in education, that begin with the end in mind. Of course, every lesson, every unit, every whatever has some type of goal or objective or exit outcome, whatever you want to call them, that's built into your lesson planning as a teacher. It's like just good practice, right? But when was the last time you asked yourself, what does the end look like for me at the end of the day? Not for the students, for you. And I realize there's a part of this that almost feels like, hey, I'm a teacher. It doesn't matter. This is part of the job. This is what I signed up for. But that is kind of a toxic work environment and expectation that society, your district, like whatever has put on us, that we're not allowed to seek for balance and fulfillment outside of, you should get everything you need from teaching students. And that's just a bunch of garbage. So why it matters is, you give of yourself throughout the day and you create this awesome lesson or you have these things going on. But what happens when you get home? Do you have any energy left for the people that matter to you? Do you get to do those passion projects that actually renew and refresh you? And are you sleeping at night? Or does the job demand so much of you that the choices that you've made mean that you're bringing papers home that steal time from your kids? You're choosing to do planning and respond to emails and parents and all this stuff on your own time. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go above and beyond, but I want to give you some tips to make sure that you can establish a healthy balance and boundary so that the rest of your life doesn't overflow. Because really, our life does overflow. You're going to hear me say this all the time. We live our life in thirds. We have sleep is about 1/3 of our life. We have our work, which is about 1/3 of our life. Wow. And then we have another 1/3 of each day, adding up to another 1/3 of our life, where we have what I'll just call personal time. It's the time you have with your family, for your passion projects, for whatever. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that what overflows for us is positive and not negative, right? Now, I talked about this on my personal YouTube channel about how, I realized some things that helped me sleep. And when I slept better, I had a better experience at work. And because I had a better experience at work, I came home more rested. I felt like I did a better job. And then I had a better experience with my family. And so there was positive overflow. And that was a good thing. So whatever I had to do to get it, was really worth it. So here's the first thing that I'm going to do, or that I want to share with you guys to help you get that. Number 1 is use a task manager. Now, I realize that for some of you, this is like, a stake to the heart, right? But for me, it was really challenging to get started. And I realized that I could reclaim something in my life by using a task manager. I use Todoist to form a to-do list and to organize my projects. And the reason that I do that is because there was a tiny bit of stress with me that I was going to forget about something. there was a tiny bit of stress that like I would miss something or whatever. And so now if I'm disciplined to put everything in, everything is captured, then everything is put on a calendar, and I know that I'm not going to forget anything. As part of my startup routine when I get to work is I go through that Todoist, everything that's scheduled for that day. I look forward ahead at the rest of the week, and then I make my plan for the day so that I know I'm good. It's also part of my shutdown routine. Now, this is the next part. A lot of teachers don't have a healthy boundary between school and home. And so they're taking things home, they're working on the couch, and their family might not say anything, but there's this quiet, sort of discontentment that, hey, where is the time that we get with you? And if there isn't, there should be. So you need a shutdown routine at the end of the day to make sure that you can walk out of the building and leave that world behind. Yes, you are an educator, but it isn't all you are. You have other fields that you operate on and places that you have to be present and impactful. And I don't have to say, oh, well, your family must not matter to you. I know they do. But I also want to make sure that you make them feel that by being present and establishing this boundary. So here's how you're going to do it. Make a list of things that you would have to let go of to walk home and not think back about the job, right? So that, for me, meant that I was going to make sure any tasks that I didn't get to that day that, I was just trying to check off my list by the end of the week were moved to the next day. That I added any tasks, that I looked at my calendar to make sure, hey, anything's weird I got to plan for tomorrow, or things I need to grab if I'm working in a different building. So any of those things, put them in a shutdown routine. And then literally my last one is tidy up my workspace and shut down. And so when I tidy up my desk and I move things around, man, did that relieve some stress. The next day when I come in, I'm not cluttered. I'm ready to rock and roll. And so that's my shutdown procedure for work. And coupled with that, number 3 is establish a sort of startup procedure for yourself in your home. So I have an ID badge, has my key on it when I come in the door. I put that in the same place. Sometimes I leave it on my truck. I put it in the same place. Anyway, I have a place for it. So it either stays in my truck, or if I happen to bring it in the house in the wintertime, because I got a coat on and it's underneath, then it goes right in my bag so that it's right there ready for the next day. And then my bag gets put on this one particular chair. So I have a place for things so that the next day I just reverse the procedure. But at this point, there's one last thing that I found really pretty interesting. So I was reading this book by Todd Herman called Alter Ego, and he talks about how you show up the best on a particular field of play. And he was giving a speech at a military base, and one of the high-ranking officers came up to him afterwards, and he said, maybe you can help me with this. I deal with my soldiers, and I lead them, and I direct them, and of course, this guy loves duty and country and the flag and the uniform. He talks about all of the honor in that and how he loved that world. But when he went home, he didn't forget those things, but he didn't want to treat his kids and his wife the exact same way that he treated his soldiers. Of course, that wouldn't, necessarily be a good thing for a long-term arrangement. So he was like, but I can't turn them off. It's who I am. And what I thought was really interesting is, he said, yeah, but it's the uniform. When you put that uniform on, you see the flag, you see the camouflage, you see your name, you see the rank, you see the history and everything that means. So then what we need to do is create a uniform that reminds you of dad life, right? So it's kind of funny that this just changes the uniform. And it doesn't mean that there's something magical about changing your clothes when you get home, but there is if you make it so. At that point, when you come home, hey, if I throw on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt, that's dad mode, right? I'm now transitioning out. I'm not going to be thinking about school. I'm not going to be checking my email. I'm not going to be grading papers. I'm here for my daughter. I'm here for my wife. I'm here for those passion projects that I care about, because that is what's going to refuel me so that I can sleep well, so that I can go in the next day and make a difference. So you've got to have a way to establish that boundary when you leave work and then when you start off at home. So that's a shutdown and a startup routine. Well, that boundary that I talked about in between those two might be really hard for you. And so part of that shutdown routine, this is kind of like maybe a 2.5 or 3.5, I don't know which number this is. But if you're establishing a hard boundary between your work and your personal life, then there might be times when it's better to stay at work and finish that work for maybe an extra hour, hour and a half, whatever, and then get the shutdown so that you can then come home and have that boundary that your home is your sanctuary, your family time, and you need to guard it. If that is super valuable to you, and I know it is, then you got to guard it. So number 5 is, I already alluded to it, disconnect your school email from your phone. So force yourself to go to a desktop or something like that. And I'm going to say this, that very, 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 I would have memorized one more. I just didn't have time. A few times, does someone need to get a hold of you in an emergency on your off time, and they're going to choose to use email? It's just not going to happen. That those things that come into your email about inbox after hours are probably, if you're anything like me, they're going to be like sales pitches from people outside of my organization, or things from my colleagues that they want me to know, or maybe it's minutes or some meeting. Look, I'm going to be able to figure that out in the morning. I'm going to be able to figure that out when I get back to work. And if not, then that person needs to understand that by sending that to me in my off time and expecting a response, they are violating the boundary that I've set up for my family. And that's not right. And I have to be willing to stand up to that. A little bit more on that in the next episode. So those are your 5 things, guys. I hope these 5 super tips really do help you kick some class. I know it's going to be a challenge, but I'm going to go through them one more time just so you've got it. Here's your takeaway, your action, your exit ticket. You teachers know you're going to get that from me. So use a task manager, right? Set up a shutdown routine. I don't care what it is, but just decide what it is and commit to it. That means number 3, you're establishing a boundary between school and home. And number 4, establish a startup routine when you get home. Last one, number 5, disconnect that school email. I'm telling you, you're going to feel a little more free, a little more rested. And you know what? If the sky's not going to fall, and if it does, it's not your fault. I'm going to say that again. It's not your fault. So, hey, go ahead and put these 5 things into place. And honestly, if you've got tips and tricks for people that are watching this, please, and on YouTube, drop these down in the comments or send me a link at Bald Guy Sai on Twitter. This is it's too valuable to shut out anybody else's input here. So help each other out. If there's things that you found really helped you establish that balance, whether, it's at work, at home, whatever it is, drop that down in the comments. Share this with somebody that you know is really going through it right now, and this could help them out. You never know. You might actually save somebody from moving on to a different career, and when they could just change some things in their life, their practice, what they got to do so that they are happier, healthier, and they can finish out their career strong to make a maximum impact in their home, at school, and in life. And hey, the only reason that's going to happen is because you set up these boundaries. You were thinking with the end in mind, and you're going to kick some class. Well, this has been the Kick Some Class podcast. I hope it helped you maximize your impact in life and home and with your students. So get on out there and kick some class. But remember, you can't kick some class if life is kicking your ass.